Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another Bad Batch Season 2 review. We are talking about Episode 6, Tribe, today. We are going to dive in full spoilers. Before we do so, though, please hit that like button. Help us get to 30 likes on this video. Subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 1,500 subs. We're on our way there. Your subscriptions will really help us out and help us push our channel into the future. It's the best way to show your support. We will be doing predictions and speculations for the Bad Batch on Friday. We will be talking about the two-part mid-season episode 7 and 8, so you'll want to stay tuned for our thoughts there. And then we do JFO live streams every Friday. Make sure you check those out. Let's get into the Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 6. If you've been following our coverage of this, you know that since the first episode, we've been waiting for Gungi to show up, and here it is, finally, Gungi. And we got a story about Gungi trying to return home to Kashyyyk, as you very aptly predicted last week. Sanak, what were your thoughts overall on Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe?
Yeah, I would say I think all the what kind of one-off episodes have ramped up into, like a good flow. And I think I really hit it on the nail last time. Like they're not quite in a funk, but they're really just doing things without real clear understanding. But then there's the other storylines that have been there from the very start of the season, and I think was pretty reinforced early on here with like Echo, and he's still the growing conscious of like the overall clone story. And here we got to see him kind of like push like, hey, Hunter, yeah, Imperials could be coming in here, but the Wookiees were great allies and all this and that for the general clone army. I think this episode is a strong step forward, and the implication of helping not just a Wookiee but a Jedi Wookiee, I feel like it's impossible to ignore. Even though this episode doesn't necessarily deal with the aftermath, what comes next, it does at least give you like a sense of like, hey, some of those things that we want to have explored at the end of the Clone Wars with these characters that George Lucas had introduced, some of the unfinished arcs that we saw, not even in full like Crystal Crisis, stuff like that can still be fleshed out. It might not get a full arc's worth, but maybe an episode can still do a good amount of justice here. And this was very clearly a repurposed story. I think the action was solid. I think seeing some cool things like Wrecker, live up to his Wookiee brothers and imitate their voices and things like that. I like those things. Again, I liked Echo and Hunter and that little aside conversations that they have. I like that's how that's building up. We've done something wonderful here. We've dealt with themes of colonialism, finding out your new home, and embracing all those themes that are prevalent in Star Wars. But what comes next, especially with a mid-season finale right around the corner?
This episode didn't push the show forward as much as I expected an episode with a Jedi to do. I thought when we kind of talked about in predictions last week, I thought that this would be the thing that would kind of push them back into the Imperial scope, is they're helping a literal fugitive get to a planet that's heavily occupied by the Empire. Like, what? How is that not going to raise red flags? And it very well might, but at the end of this episode, it doesn't seem like it's going to strongly connect, or that Gungi might be a big part of the show moving forward. But I enjoyed the way they used it. It's like getting to see Wookiees interact with the environment of Kashyyyk never gets old, and we get a bit of that in Revenge of the Sith on the water, but here seeing them really utilize the forest and the creatures within the forest and all of the kind of the jungle warfare that we get a bit of in Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks. It was very cool to see kind of what maybe a Wookiee version of Return of the Jedi could have been like, and all the stuff from the Wookiee tribe, the different tribal politics, the leaders, the way it all worked out, and the way the Bad Batch dealt with holding the weight of the sins of the clones on their shoulders, the way the Wookiees don't trust them at first, the way Gungi doesn't really trust them at first, in the way I think one of the more underrated and kind of sensitive moments of this episode is really when Gungi's sitting in the corner and Omega doesn't really understand why he's afraid of them, and they're not really giving her the full story of what happened at Order 66, but they're kind of giving her a bit of the side part of it. They're not really diving into the dirty details or their experience with Kanan or anything like that. And I thought that those were some really strong moments. Those are the moments that really pull you back to the Clone Wars, and pull you back to the Fives arc and all of that stuff, the tragedy on both sides of what Order 66 really is. The action, the lighting, all of it was wonderful. It's in the vein of the last 2 though, where I'm wondering what the general reception will be for this, because it seems that the general reception for amongst people have not been ultra positive for the last 2 episodes, even though we both enjoyed them. They don't push the story forward. So how does an episode like this, will it just be received better because it has a Jedi in it? So like, I wanted to talk about one specific thing here. I wanted to ask your thoughts on when it comes to the Imperial tech and the way they're working with the Trandoshans in this episode. It was really cool seeing them reutilize AATs for like jungle travel and traversal, and teaming up with Trandoshans isn't, I mean, it's very Imperial because they're obviously like almost as evil as you can get with creatures in Star Wars, and they're blatantly like treacherous and snake-like. But what were your thoughts on some of the ways we saw them reusing separatist weaponry here in this episode?
Well, I think it was really interesting that Hunter said Imperial tanks. I believe it was Hunter. When saw that, I was like, "Oh, are we gonna see like the big Rumble tank that's from Episode 3?" I was like, "That's one of my favorite, most underrated designs." And then we don't. We see, like you said, the AAT, and I guess it follows the principle of like an enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of deal here. They know that Trandoshans are like the natural enemy, evil, like demon spawn of Wookiees and their history and culture and whatever. And on a planet where a lot of these, I mean, the Wookiees believe in the trees, they're the real beings of the planet, we're just part of their ecosystem. They're the ones who truly will connect with this world and whatnot. Having the Trandoshans be brought in expected, and having them flame the trees and raise any Wookiee on site also expected. What was not expected was the AAT, and I think it's pretty interesting that perhaps in the same vein of when Obi-Wan and Anakin and Ahsoka went to Onderon to train Saw Gerrera and his crew, maybe the Imperials are like have learned, or clones have learned those same tactics, and it's been pushed up to a willing commander or listener, and they're trying to just minimize the tech that could be damaged, that is theirs, that is Republic, and taking what was always going to be the loser of the war and taking their technology, giving it to those who can ease the burden for them. Like we saw some clones with them, but primarily, it felt like a very Trandoshan-led operation. I mean, I think it's a nice touch. We're still very early on from them, transitioning truly into like the TIE fighters and all the more iconic imagery of the Empire. In my mind, when we talk about these outlier planets and whatnot, you use an AAT and the Separatist deck. You use whatever ones that were Republic originally for more important matters, and then whatever's damaged, you recycle and repurpose that into your TIE fighter programs and whatnot. And I think that'd be pretty interesting to think that, hey, like all these state of the art items and technology and pieces came from a droid army and a clone army, all kind of like pushed all together and churned out to become Imperial.
Yeah, I think that's the one of the more fascinating parts of this episode is the way it kind of not necessarily contradicts things we've seen or heard before, but especially in Legends, because Sheik becomes the main source of imperial slave labor like almost immediately, and not just labor, but also it's a major place because of the trees for factory building and production of weaponry. So because they have so many natural resources there, it basically gets leveled at one point, and the whole planet is under imperial control. And here we do hear Echo and Hunter talking about it could be heavily occupied by the Imperials, or they might have a few outposts there, but they don't. It doesn't seem to be as fully important to the Empire at this point, and I think we can see that by the lack of almost like they haven't even brought new tech to these clones who are out here on these outposts. They're stranded out here. They're just capturing Wookiees, but they're not really important yet. This planet, like they're using AATs, they're repurposing things that were in the war. Makes it Kashyyyk a lot further behind in the like imperial power structure of importance than it is in Legends, and was kind of where we were led to believe in canon with something like Life Debt or other things that we've read about that have heavily mentioned Chewbacca's past and Kashyyyk's capture. So I think that's about going to do it for our review here. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet, again, please like the video. It'll really help us out, and subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 1,500 subs. We're on our way there, very close. So make sure you're subscribing. Check out our predictions and speculations for episode 7 and 8, the two-part mid-season episode, which will be out on Friday. And then also stay tuned on Friday for our JFO live streams. We will be live streaming JFO every single Friday. And with Jedi Survivor being pushed back, we have a little bit more time to finish the game. We answer your questions live. It's very fun. And if you haven't checked out my bookshelf tour, I posted that on Monday as well. If you're into Star Wars books, both legends and canon. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.